Behind the Line, episode number 40. I am your host, KC. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave a 5-star rating on iTunes. I appreciate all the support. Today I'm going to talk about the latest Anthony Davis injury, the impact it could have on the Lakers. Also going to get into the Cleveland Browns coaching search. Talk a little bit about the XFL and what I think of its chance to succeed in its inaugural season. But I'm going to start off with the NFL. There's a lot of talk this week surrounding the future of Tom Brady. And not his NFL future, as Tom Brady has made it abundantly clear on more than one occasion that he's going to be playing in the NFL next season. But his future with the New England Patriots is up in the air. It's in doubt. I, for one, believe that his career in New England is over. I don't think he wants to be back in New England, and quite honestly, I don't think Bill Belichick wants him back in New England. I mentioned last week, I think there's real resentment between Brady and Belichick. I think some of that resentment comes from the fact that Belichick drafted Brady's heir apparent a few years ago in Jimmy Garoppolo. And then he had to trade him because his legendary quarterback would not retire. I sometimes wonder if surrounding Tom Brady with so little talent this season, after he took a hometown discount, was Belichick's way of kind of nudging Tom Brady out of New England. What's not being talked about, though, or at least not much, is the future of Drew Brees in New Orleans. And for good reason. It's almost a certainty that he will be back with the Saints next season. The Saints are going to have to pay him over $20 million whether he's playing for them or not, so they might as well keep him. And Brees has shown no indication that he's ready to retire from the NFL. Especially since he was so productive this season. And look, god-awful in the playoff loss to the Vikings. I don't think he's going to go out and end his career like that with the way he played on Sunday. But could the Saints be headed down the road that New England, and Bill Belichick specifically, was facing several years ago? An aging quarterback not ready to hang it up, while your heir apparent is patiently waiting on the sidelines for his turn to take over the team. In the Saints' case, they've got two potential successors to Drew Brees standing on the sideline in Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill. New Orleans is in a tough cap situation this offseason. They committed big money to Cam Jordan and Michael Thomas last summer. Brees is probably going to command $25 or $30 million unless he gives them a hometown discount. They've got Alvin Kamara, Marshawn Lattimore, star offensive guard Ryan Ramczyk, all up for contract extensions on their rookie deals. They're restricted free agents. They've also got decisions to make on other veteran players, Andrus Peat, Janoris Jenkins, Von Bell, just to name a few. So is it really possible for the Saints to hold on to Bridgewater and Taysom Hill while Drew Brees plays the final 1, 2, I don't know, maybe 3 years of his career? Possible, yes. Likely, no. If they do hang on to all three, what is the cost? You can't keep a Super Bowl roster when you're paying three quarterbacks millions of dollars apiece. Teddy Bridgewater is likely going to be able to command more than the $7 million he made last season. Taysom Hill is going to be able to get more money. It might not happen this offseason, but sooner rather than later, the Saints are going to be facing an interesting conundrum. Brees has stated on multiple occasions that he wants to play until he's 45 years old. He's going to turn 41 in another week or two. Eventually, Sean Payton and Mickey Loomis, the Saints general manager, are going to have to decide between their legendary aging quarterback or Teddy Bridgewater and Taysom Hill. Teddy Bridgewater reportedly wants to remain in New Orleans, but he's not going to wait 4 more years to become a starting quarterback. Neither's Taysom Hill, who's going to be 30 years old in August. These guys aren't getting any younger, like Drew Brees. The Patriots made the right decision in the near term when they held on to Tom Brady instead of giving the starting job to Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, they won another Super Bowl. You can't say it was the wrong decision. But winning a Super Bowl hasn't happened yet in New Orleans, and they've come close 3 years. Well, 2 out of the 3 years anyway. What's more concerning, Brees' production has tailed off late in the season. It didn't happen this year because he sat 5 weeks towards the middle of the year. But in both 2017 and 2018, his production fell dramatically in December and into the playoffs. He's no longer a threat with the deep ball. The Saints still put up good offensive numbers, but this is not the same explosive offense it was during Drew Brees' prime years. Most of their passes are dink and dunk, 10, 20 yards and under. We saw what happened against Minnesota when you can threaten teams deep, when Taysom Hill threw that bomb to Deontay Harris. The Saints cannot do that with Drew Brees under center. You can't make that play with him. He tried it with Ted Ginn later in the game. He underthrew him so bad it was intercepted. You can't underestimate the leadership that Drew Brees brings to this Saints team. And can't underestimate what he's done for this franchise in the city of New Orleans. But at some point, you've got to go with your future instead of sticking with your past. Like I said, maybe they can hang on to all 3 of these guys through the 2020 season. But the decision is going to have to be made sooner or later. And Drew Brees is likely not going to retire until he wins a Super Bowl. It's not going to be an easy decision if Sean Payton ends up having to make it. Him and Brees are as close as any coach and quarterback in the league. But he's going to have to decide whether he takes the path that Bill Belichick in New England took and keeps his legendary quarterback over 2 guys who deserve to lead the team, or he chooses the Saints' future and goes with Teddy Bridgewater or Taysom Hill. Starting quarterbacks don't fall off trees in this league. This is a good situation for the Saints to be in. But if he doesn't make the right decision, the Saints could fall into a full rebuild, just like the Patriots are about to do. All right, moving on. 31 teams in the NFL have head coaches. The one remaining team without a head coach is the Cleveland Browns. It's not a surprise. Jimmy Haslam and Paul DePodesta seem to be taking their time. They know this hiring decision is critically important to the future of Baker Mayfield and, quite frankly, the future of this franchise. It seems like every year, the Cleveland Browns are faced with the same dilemma: hiring a head coach. At the beginning of every offseason, the Browns hire a coach, state that this is going to change the franchise. They're always either going to rebuild through the draft, or they're going to take a win-now approach and sign players in free agency. This offseason's no different. The question is, will the Browns finally get it right? I'm not going out on much of a limb when I say, fuck no, they're not going to get it right. All you have to do is look at the history of this franchise the past decade or so, or the past 2 or 3 decades, and the answer's clear. The Cleveland Browns never seem to learn from their mistakes. Back in 2014, they drafted Johnny Manziel, high-profile, undersized superstar college quarterback. Several instances during his college days where he was in trouble with the law or the NCAA, it was an unmitigated disaster with Johnny Manziel in Cleveland. He was accused of being lazy, not committed to his craft. Fast forward 4 years later, the Browns had the number 1 pick in the 2018 draft. Do they use their good fortune to draft good-sized, high-character guys like Sam Darnold, Josh Allen? Of course not. This is the Cleveland Browns. They use their number 1 pick to draft the undersized guy with questionable character in Baker Mayfield, who, like Manziel, had trouble with the law while he was in college, who, like Manziel, wasn't committed to his craft this past offseason. Instead of improving his skill set, He spent the offseason filming every fucking commercial he could. You can't watch an NFL game without seeing Baker Mayfield's face on a fucking commercial. I can name wrong coaching hire after wrong coaching hire in Cleveland. Hugh Jackson, Mike Pettin, more recently, Freddie Kitchens. A hire that everyone knew was wrong, except Jimmy Haslam and the Cleveland Browns. I have no faith in this organization to get it right. None. They're the poster child for dysfunction. They hire general managers that don't align with head coaches. They don't draft well. When is the last time the Browns drafted a Pro Bowl quality player? Joe Thomas on the offensive line? Myles Garrett maybe? After 8 or 9 years, Joe Thomas finally got fed up with losing. He decided he's just going to fucking retire. Cleveland needs an offensive-minded head coach. Someone to develop Baker Mayfield. Then I see today that Eagles defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz is the likely front runner for the Browns coaching vacancy. That does not make any sense to me. But it's typical of the Cleveland Browns. Things they do hardly ever make sense. I'm not high on Josh McDaniels as a head coach. His tenure in Denver was not good. One of the first things he did in Denver was get rid of Jay Cutler, which is fine if you've got a suitable replacement. You don't trade Jay Cutler for Kyle fucking Orton. But Josh McDaniels would be a better candidate in Cleveland than Jim Schwartz. Like I said, they need someone to develop Baker Mayfield. Jim Schwartz has never developed a quarterback in his NFL career. All right, moving on. We're in the midst of the NFL playoffs, but in a few weeks, the NFL season's going to end. But fear not, says Vince McMahon, because the XFL is going to step in after the Super Bowl and provide us with an even better alternative to the National Football League. How many times is someone going to offer us an alternative to the NFL? When are these rich billionaires going to realize that this is a waste of their time and money? I've got a news flash for Vince McMahon. You cannot compete with the NFL. If you don't know who Vince McMahon is, he's the owner of the WWE, the professional wrestling organization that he calls sports entertainment. Very successful with that. But he's tried this XFL experiment before, and it failed miserably. They sold it as being extreme football, but all it really was extremely bad football. The NFL is the most popular sports league in America by a wide margin. Their ratings triple, sometimes quadruple NBA ratings. Major League Baseball doesn't even come close. It's laughable how far behind baseball is in popularity when compared to the NFL or even the NBA. One of the things that makes the NFL so popular is because it's scarce. 16-game season, 1 game each week. Regular season only runs for 4 months. Come the end of December, if your team isn't in the playoffs, you've got to wait 8 months to get your football fix. If you took the scarcity away, if the NFL season was, say, 6 months instead of 4 months, it wouldn't feel quite as special. Just because we yearn for football in the offseason doesn't mean that we want football to be played in February, March, and April. Which is why these leagues that have popped up over the years have all failed. You can't replicate the NFL. They've got the best athletes in the country that cannot be duplicated. You watch the speed at the NFL level, compare it to college, and it's night and day different. The only league that achieved a small modicum of success was the USFL back in the 1980s. And it only lasted 3 seasons before it folded. We had the AAF, I think it was the Alliance of American Football last spring. Hell, it didn't even make it through its first season. I will give Vince McMahon credit with his first iteration of the XFL. As bad as the football was on the field, and believe me, it was fucking bad. He did come up with several innovative ideas that the NFL uses today. He came up with the Sky Cam. He was the first to mic up players on the field. So Vince McMahon did have some innovations that have enhanced the NFL product. But let's be honest. This second version of the XFL is not going to work. Once the Super Bowl wraps up, the spring belongs to the NBA and college basketball. March is dominated by March Madness. Once that's over, the NBA playoffs begin. They dominate the headlines through mid-June. The only way that I could see a secondary football league working or having some type of success is if it ran during the summer. The problem with that is all of the games would have to be played indoors because it's too hot outside throughout most of the country to be playing football all summer. Arena football went with this type of model. It lasted over 20 years, but it was never popular on a mainstream level. The same problem a secondary football league like the XFL faces is the same problem that Major League Baseball is facing right now. Major League Baseball has been on the decline the past 10 or 15 years. It actually started to decline in popularity in the 1990s. But the home run chase in 1998 between Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa saved the sport for the next 10 or so years. Ever since PEDs, steroids, HGH, ever since all of that's been removed from baseball, it has declined in popularity. Why? Because there isn't a month in the year that isn't being dominated by either the NFL or the NBA. The NFL dominates the headlines from August to early February. The NBA dominates from February through July with free agency. There's no time left for Major League Baseball or other sports leagues. I'm going to give the XFL a shot just to see what they have to offer. I did the same thing with the AAF and was disinterested after the first half. I have a feeling it's going to be the same with the XFL. All right, I'm going to close out today with the NBA. Anthony Davis took a hard fall Tuesday night in the Staples Center and the Lakers' blowout win over the Knicks. The injury's not expected to be serious. The team's calling it a gluteus maximus contusion. Basically, he's got a bruised ass. AD's expected to be on the Lakers road trip this week. He's listed as questionable, but I highly doubt he's going to play. Before this, Anthony Davis had only missed 2 games this season, which is rare. Anthony Davis is a top 5 player in the NBA, but as consistently good as he is, he's also been consistently injured. Lakers coach Frank Vogel had the audacity to say Anthony Davis is as tough as they come, that he plays through pretty much anything. I literally laughed out loud when I heard him say that. Frank Vogel must be unaware of AD's 7 years in New Orleans. The 3 or 4 times he was unable to play through what was described as a illness. The 68 games he missed over his first 4 seasons. Seemed like every other week in New Orleans, Anthony Davis was out due to an ankle injury, a hip injury, a concussion, a sore back. You name it, AD's missed time for it. He's never played more than 75 games in a season. Only twice has he played more than 68. To his credit, a lot of his injuries have to do with his style of play. He's aggressive, takes a lot of dives, a lot of hard falls. It was thought that once he was paired with LeBron James and defenses weren't solely focused on Anthony Davis night after night, that the injury issues he's had in the past wouldn't be as prevalent. And so far, that's been the case. The thing, though, with nagging injuries, especially if they've happened throughout a career, and to the extent that Anthony Davis has had them, they have a tendency to resurface. Of the elite teams in the NBA, the Lakers, in my opinion, are the most vulnerable. You have an aging superstar in LeBron and an injury-prone star in Anthony Davis. Whether we like it or not, this is why teams are going with load management. Injuries can happen anytime, I know, but you're much more likely to be injured when you're fatigued. Without Anthony Davis, this Lakers team goes from top 5 scoring, top 5 defense, to mediocre. The pressure to carry the load falls squarely on the shoulders of LeBron James, who at 35 years old can't carry a team like he could in his prime. Dwight Howard and JaVale McGee aren't going to cut it replacing AD. Kyle Kuzma can't replace his offensive production. It was a risk trading the future of the franchise for Anthony Davis, but a risk that the Lakers had to take. They couldn't turn that down. You don't bring in LeBron James at this stage in his career to wait around on Brandon Ingram and Lonzo Ball to develop. Now, I've been highly critical of load management in the past, at least when superstar players sit out road games or games that are nationally televised. But this is the reason why it's becoming more and more prevalent. Teams in the NBA are 100% dependent on one or two, sometimes three, elite level players for success. It's not like that in the NFL. We just watched the Eagles win their division with practice squad players. 10 years ago, we saw Tom Brady go down in week 1 against Kansas City. Matt fucking Castle stepped in and led the Patriots to the playoffs. The NBA is completely different. The Warriors last season lose Kevin Durant, the finals are over. If the Clippers were to lose Kawhi Leonard, they aren't making it out of the Western Conference. The Lakers lose either LeBron or AD, season's over. Now, Anthony Davis rejected the Lakers' contract extension the other day, which was expected. I mean, he'll be an unrestricted free agent this offseason for the first time in his career, can make another $50 million if he goes into free agency. At this point, Anthony Davis is worth big money, a max contract. But what happens if the injuries continue to pile up? These large NBA contracts can become an albatross to a franchise in a hurry. Look no further than Blake Griffin. He missed his rookie season with an injury, then became one of the biggest superstars in the league. Los Angeles became Lob City with him and Chris Paul. Then around 26 years old, the nagging injuries started to catch up. He's played 75 games once since 2015. Most seasons, under 60 games played. And now, he's likely out the remainder of this season with an injury after only playing 18 games. Anthony Davis is 26 years old, a career full of nagging injuries. Now, will his career go the way of Blake Griffin, John Wall, Dwight Howard, the many before him who were given massive contracts that became a hindrance? I don't know. But the Lakers are title or bust this season. LeBron James is under contract for 2 more years. He's got a player option for 2021, so could be 1 more year. If Anthony Davis re-signs this offseason, the Lakers are eventually going to need cap space for another superstar player, which means LeBron's going to have to take a pay cut or the Lakers wave him bye-bye. How much longer can LeBron James play at a high level? He'll be 36 next December. His prime days are behind him. The duo of AD and LeBron has worked well in the regular season, but I don't think this team can win the NBA Finals. I've been saying it all year. Said it before the season started. They don't have the depth. The Lakers have one playmaker, LeBron James. No one else on this team can create offense for others. And LeBron's past championship years, he's had a Kyrie, he's had a Dwayne Wade. He doesn't have that in Los Angeles. Anthony Davis is a great offensive player, but he's got to have someone to set him up. Also, the Clippers have 2 tough defenders in Kawhi and Paul George. They won't be able to stop AD completely, but they can contain him. The Rockets are also good in the Western Conference. I think the Lakers are obviously better than them, but who on the Lakers is going to guard James Harden? I mean, LeBron's defense has improved this season over last season, but he's not the same defender he was 4 or 5 years ago. My point is, the Western Conference is stacked. Utah, Denver. I just think it's going to be tough for this Lakers team to make it out of the West, unless they make a trade before the deadline. Not to mention, I don't think Anthony Davis has that killer gene, that winning instinct, win at all cost mentality. I watched this guy for 7 years in New Orleans, night after night. For the majority of his time there, the Pelicans were under 500. Superstar players with talent like Anthony Davis has, once-in-a-generation type guys, they're supposed to be able to elevate their teams. AD never did. LeBron James. How many LeBron James teams have been under 500? 1? Last year in Los Angeles? Maybe his first year in Cleveland? 2? How many Dwayne Wade teams were under 500? How many Dirk Nowitzki teams were under 500? Anthony Davis had 5 out of 7 years in New Orleans with sub-500 teams. During that playoff run in 2018 when they swept Portland in the first round, Rondo and Drew Holiday were leading that team. It wasn't Anthony Davis. You can't teach that killer instinct, that leadership. It's not going to rub off from LeBron onto Anthony Davis. Look at both games against the Clippers this season. AD looked great for 3 quarters. Come the fourth quarter, he fucking disappears. Throughout his career, LeBron has been criticized for not being a closer. And when I say that, I mean he doesn't want to take that last shot to win the game or drive the lane to get to the free throw line for those 2 high-pressure free throws. Who on this Lakers team is going to be the closer in the playoffs? The Clippers have 2. The Rockets have 2. All right, that's all for today. I'll be back tomorrow morning with my NFL picks for the divisional round of the playoffs. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave me a 5-star rating on iTunes. Leave a comment in the section below, or you can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. I will see you tomorrow morning.